Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Kyra and today I'm bringing to you 7 looks and my review on the ABH and Jackie Aina palette. I realized that this palette is not new, but I really took my time thinking about the palette, whether I really wanted to add it to my collection and, just whether it would be the right fit for me or not. I wasn't entirely sure. There's a few shades in this palette that I'll talk about in my review that kind of threw my eye and my brain for a loop, if you can believe it, because it's eyeshadow and it's not that deep. But anyways, if you're new to these videos or to my channel, welcome. And I do videos like these with new palettes in my life, not necessarily to the market. And I do 7 looks so that I can bring to you my full and competent review on the palette. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and get into the 7 looks. seventh and final look completed. I did finish off this look with the teeny tiny, almost empty Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk lipstick from her Matte Revolution line. I love this color. I'm going to be really sad when it's gone. But let's go ahead and dive into my thoughts on the palette. I'm just going to give you my thoughts off the cuff here, but hopefully my thoughts on the palette after creating 7+ looks will mean something to you or be helpful to you in some way. So let's start with my favorite look that I created during these 7 looks. It is the one that had edges in the crease and Dwollahs on the lid. I'll put a picture up for you. I just really enjoyed that, but I also really loved the look. I believe it was the first look that I used the shade Sponsored. So let's talk a little bit about where I felt challenged with this palette, and I did feel challenged for some reason. I don't know if it's because I've been doing so many neutral looks lately that my color bug sort of ran away for a little while or what. The number one shade that really threw me for a loop was this red shade called Wigglies, and fortunately something I didn't remember from originally swatching it, but upon swatching it last night before I had done the 6th and 7th looks, I realized that it's a lot more of a warm red, like leaning more to the orange side of red versus, you know, a cooler toned red, if that makes sense. Good grief. But when I realized that, I was like, okay, now I can see how this works into the color story. So I did use the warmer tones down here, and then I played off of that warmth with the shade Zam layered over Wigglies a little bit, because this is sort of like goldish copper, and because this is leaning more toward orange, I think it all played really nicely together. I wish I had worn the look more than 5 minutes before I took it off and created this one, but you know, I can recreate it another day should the occasion arise. Another shade that challenged me a little bit in this palette was this shade Supreme right here. It's a very bubblegummy pink in my opinion. It is the one that I wore in the transition today, and I used it as a transition in another look as well. For me, I'm just not into that kind of a pink, at least not paired with the other, like the rest of this palette. I feel like if you cover up that pink, the color story makes a lot of sense. All of it, even the silly red, but I feel like when you add that pink back, it confuses my eye a little bit. Also, like I said, I'm just not really into that type of pink. So it does work nicely for me as a transition shade, especially when you're talking about using the other pink and the purples in the palette. I think it worked well. If I was pulling for this palette during a different season, it might not have thrown me for such a loop, but those are my thoughts there. Otherwise, I didn't think there were any duds in this palette, and to be fair, those two are not duds either. They're good shadows, they just confused my brain a little bit. I will say that Zam has a good amount of fallout, so be careful about that. It did, you know, wipe away very easily with a powder brush, but in case that matters to you or you tend to cause fallout, as some people's application techniques can, maybe do your eyes first. Definite standout shades for me was Lituation, which is kind of like a purpley taupe, and then of course Sponsored, which I think is a favorite shade to a lot of people, sort of a brown based pigment with a green reflect. And then, like I said, Dwollahs here is like a greeny gold, and it's absolutely beautiful. Another shade that kind of threw me for a loop when I first saw it, just because I think I was expecting it to be different, is the shade Trust Issues. And it's definitely more of a topper. You can see here, it's definitely got yellow gold in it, but I also think it has a titch of green to it, because in the look where I layered it over the all purple lid, it definitely pulled very green in my opinion, but it's just not at all what I thought it was going to be, especially because it presents itself as like a white ish shadow in the palette. I think it's cool that it's a topper shade because it could layer over so many of the shades in this palette and be a really beautiful little extra something something there. But like I said, overall, I think all of the shadows performed really well. I do like this shade Soleil a lot. That is what the one I have on my lid right now. In terms of the other mattes in the palette, which are Edges, Credit, and Ginger, I love these mattes. They're really beautiful. I feel like this dark matte called Credit really pairs beautifully with any of the mattes in this palette, even this pink. I have it paired with the pink shades today. So I think that's really beautiful. I think it could be really easily sheared out in the transition and crease and add a lid shade, and it would be a very easy look. Who do I think this would be perfect for? Well, first of all, those men and women of color who have been waiting for Anastasia and Jackie Aina to create something that works for them. I think there are far too many palettes out there that only work for part of the population that is consuming makeup in this day and age. I don't understand why it is that way at all, and it doesn't make a lick of sense to me. So I'm really glad that this palette, while it works for me, it also works for those people who wouldn't be able to use a peachy tone transition or a light, you know, whatever transition. That's not cool and it's not fair. And I'm really glad that they got this palette from ABH finally. And I hope that ABH continues to be more inclusive in the future, because this will work for the palest of the pale people, depending on your preferences. But it's also going to work for others who are consuming makeup, who have the beautiful, dark, rich skin tones, for whom a lot of palettes don't work. Not cool. So I'm really glad about that. And I think this palette is definitely for those folks. But I also think that this is for someone who's looking for a very versatile palette. Not only color story wise, like I said, there's a couple of really interesting choices in here in terms of the light pink and whatnot, but I also think it's versatile in terms of the time of year that you could or may want to wear this palette. Wow, tongue-tied today. I mean, yeah, I definitely see fall when I look at this, but I also can think of a ton of spring, summer, and winter looks to create with this palette. I think this is going to pair beautifully with the other ABH palettes in my collection. And so I think if someone's looking for a very versatile palette, something that could be used for glam, something that could be used for every day or work or school, I mean, as well as something to have a little bit of fun with, I think that this is a great palette for that. It's very, very versatile in every sense of the word. I do think, despite the darker tones in this palette, that it is relatively easy to use, at least in terms of ABH palettes. I know a lot of us, myself included, can sometimes struggle with the blending process with these very soft, very pigmented, and sometimes powdery or even chalky shadows from ABH. But I found this actually really easy to use. I tried different primers. I tried it without primer. I tried it with concealer and so on. But overall, I really, really enjoyed this palette. I'm glad that even though I waited and waited and waited on this palette, I am really glad that I picked it up in the end, because this is a beautiful palette and it does add a lot of value to my collection, not just my ABH palettes, but to my eyeshadow palette collection as a whole. There are definitely unique shades in here. I think the packaging is beautiful. I think that, like I said, it's going to pair beautifully with some of my other ABH palettes. And now that I have reviewed this one, I can go ahead and start working on my ranking my ABH palettes video, which is going to be coming soon. And so that's it. I hope you enjoyed the looks. Let me know down in the comments which was your favorite. I always love hearing that, and it does really tell me a lot about the types of looks that you all are interested in seeing from me. And I hope that this review was helpful in some way to you. Remember that you don't need this palette. You can take inspirations from the looks and go into your own collection and create something similar. And with all of that said, thank you so much for watching today. I appreciate each and every single one of you, and I hope all of your makeup days are absolutely beautiful makeup days. And I will see you in my next video real soon.